So almost all of the attention in the credit card game recently has been going to the changes made by issuers like Capital One, Chase, and American Express. But there is an issuer that has slowly been falling from grace, and that is US Bank. When I started YouTube a year and a half ago, my plan was to build an entire setup of US Bank cards. But because of new spend caps, devaluations, and discontinuations, that's not a viable plan anymore. It's not even possible. So today let's talk about all these new changes and also address the rumors about US Bank resurrecting the Altitude Reserve. The discontinuation of the Altitude Reserve is also where I want to start this video off. I don't think people really remember just how powerful that card is. Statement credits and annual fees have gotten so ridiculous on premium travel credit cards recently, I think people forgot that a couple years ago there was actual real competition. So what led US Bank was this Altitude Reserve card. This credit card gave you 3 points back on all your travel and then purchases through any mobile wallet. And what made this card special is that when you redeem those points through US Bank's travel portal, you got a 50% boost, meaning that you were pretty much getting 4.5% back on every single one of your purchases. And for the couple places that you couldn't use mobile wallet pay at, you were still getting an effective 1.5% back. Now this card came with a $400 annual fee, but it gave you $325 worth of statement credits that could be used for any dining or travel. And that is literally any dining or any travel. So if I went to Chipotle, Panda Express, any sit-down restaurant, I'd be able to use that statement credit. And in the world now where you have to go to one of the Sapphire tables or the Resi tables, people are forgetting what a true statement credit looked like, and that is what the Altitude Reserve gave you. It's also a Visa Infinite card, meaning that it comes with some better travel protections, and this card also came with TSA PreCheck or Global Entry credit, and 8 free visits into Priority Pass lounges. Now there are some other things to consider like credit limits and difficulty getting approved, but what this card pretty much gave you is 4.5% back, premium travel protections, and lounge access for only $75. Now, this was very, very appealing to me because when I started the credit card game at 19, I looked at the travel credit cards with their transfer partners and the flexible points currencies and the different points currencies, and it all just overwhelmed me. So being able to get a travel credit card that I could use for almost every single purchase without worrying about all that stuff was very, very appealing to me. So if someone like my dad or my neighbor came to me and said that they wanted a travel credit card that they could use for every single purchase without having to learn all that complicated stuff, the Altitude Reserve was there. The closest thing that we have to that is the Venture X, but you have to do a lot of homework even with that card. But I think that was the problem. It was too easy for literally anyone to get positive value from this card, which meant US Bank was leaving money on the table. Now, US Bank randomly took this card off the market and then put it back on a month or two later, twice in the past. So when the card was taken off the market about a year ago, people expected it to be back. But instead of bringing the Altitude Reserve back, US Bank introduced the Smartly card. Pretty ironic name considering how dumb this card actually is, but what it is a 2% back credit card with no sign-up bonus that allows you to earn all the way up to 4%, but to be able to earn that extra 2% back on your credit card, you had to have money sitting with US Bank. Pretty much every issuer now has a card that gives you 2% back, so most people assume that this was just US Bank's version with the little boost gimmick thing that most people weren't going to take advantage of. But what people didn't realize is that US Bank actually wanted the Smartly card to replace the Altitude Reserve and be their new flagship card. That did not go well at all. So in order to get that 4% back on your credit card, you had to have over $100,000 with US Bank. Now, obviously, you don't want that $100,000 sitting in a checking or even a savings account. So what most people did is move their stocks or IRAs over to US Bank. Now, immediately after this card was announced, I made a video expressing my concerns with it. That's a lot of capital to move over for an extra 2% back on your credit card. And I was concerned that there was nothing stopping US Bank from just removing that 2% back as soon as you moved your stocks or IRAs over, and that's exactly what happened. Now money in US Bank stocks or IRA no longer counts towards that 100K, so you have to have it sitting in a savings or a checking account, which are both absolutely horrible options. So now not only is US Bank's Premier card a complete joke, they also more or less rug pulled people with this card, and it's not even a good 2% back card because it doesn't come with a sign-up bonus. Also, for all of their points earning cards, which are really just cash back cards because you can't transfer out those points, there was a devaluation to those points as well. And I know that sounds crazy because it's like, how do you devalue cashback points? That it doesn't make sense. Well, US Bank found a way to do it. What US Bank did is made it so the only way to redeem your points at 1 cent per point is into one of their checking or savings account. If you redeem it as a statement credit, that's only going to be 0.8 cents per point. So unless you're redeeming into a US Bank account, that Forex you're earning on the Smartly, Altitude Connect, and then Altitude Go is really like 3.2% back. Speaking of the Altitude Go, that is the next card that I want to talk about. Probably a lot of you guys aren't aware of this card because it was, seen as just a mediocre cashback card, but it had a very specific use case. It gave you 20,000 bonus points, 4x points on dining takeout and restaurant delivery, 2 points at grocery stores and gas stations, and 2 points on streaming services, and a $15 statement credit for streaming service, which is actually kind of cool. Now, 4x points, which is really just 4% cashback on this card, really isn't impressive, but this card did have a very specific use case, and that was for people that spent a lot in dining, but didn't want to travel. So this card would make sense over something like the City Custom Cash that has a $500 cap. But now the Altitude Go has a $2,000 cap on your dining each quarter. So that new rewards cap pretty much took away any possible use case for the Altitude Go. You'd be a lot better going with the City Custom Cash or any other 5% cashback dining card. And also don't forget, to get that full 4% back, you need a US Bank checking or savings account. So overall, US Bank's game plan is pretty obvious, and that is incentivize people to open up a checking or savings account so that they can redeem their points, which helps them cross-sell you on more things like mortgages and loans. Now, US Bank has always been a pretty conservative lender that you've needed a relationship with, and that was fine when the relationship was healthy and you were getting something like the Altitude Reserve in return. But that relationship has turned pretty sour and one-sided. It's kind of like when you have a girlfriend and the relationship's great at first, and you guys are both going out of the way to make each other happy, but then over time she just stops caring and the relationship becomes completely one-sided. Of course, that's all theoretical. I've never felt the touch of a woman, but you get the point. That being said, there are still 2 very good cards from US Bank and a couple things that they could do to redeem themselves. You can no longer completely build your setup with US Bank cards, but what these cards do is act as supporting cards. And if you've watched any of my previous videos in the past, I think the best way to approach the credit card game is to build your core setup and then add supporting cards. So to put that into Fortnite terms, you used to be able to build your whole loadout with US Bank. You could have your shotgun and your AR with them, but now that same chest only drops heals. Now these heals are useful, but they're not giving you the victory royale on their own. So the first card that's worth getting eventually for pretty much anyone in the credit card game is the US Bank Cashplus. So basically you get to choose 2 categories where you earn 5% back in. Now there isn't a 5% back category for gas, grocery, and restaurant. You can choose that as a 2% back category, but there are some very, very good unique 5% back categories that you can choose. Some of the slept on ones are gym memberships, utilities, or internet and streaming services. And these are categories that pretty much everyone spends money in every single month. And the US Bank Cashplus is one of the only cards that gives you high cash back in those categories. Now you do have to activate those categories each quarter, but that takes like 10 seconds. And there is a $2,000 cap on those 5% back categories, but that's not really going to be an issue for pretty much anyone. Also, this card does have a $200 sign-up bonus, and what not a lot of people know is that this card also has a secured version, meaning that literally anyone can get approved for this card, making it one of the best starter cards out there in my opinion, because it's always going to be giving you value in your setup. The next good support card from US Bank is the Altitude Connect. Now, if you're running one of the mid-level travel credit cards like the City Strata Premier, Chase Sapphire Preferred, or Venture Rewards, but you want some premium travel benefits, the US Bank Altitude Connect gives you that with no annual fee. You get a $100 statement credit for TSA PreCheck or global entry, no foreign transaction fees, and 4 free visits each year into Priority Pass lounges. And if you're only flying a couple times a year, this could be perfect for you, and it comes with no annual fee, so this is pretty much all free value. And what not a lot of people know is that Chase Sapphire lounges are technically Priority Pass lounges, and with all Priority Pass cards, you get 1 free visit into those Sapphire lounges each year. Now, there are some other benefits that this card offers, like a 20,000 point sign-up bonus, some rewards on gas and then dining, but it's, no one's really getting the card for that reason. Now, as good as those 2 cards are, they're not good enough to make them a major contender in the credit card space. So is US Bank just going to stay in this more support role with their couple of cards, or can they actually become contenders again? And the answer is that US Bank is absolutely going to try to become a contender. They're one of the largest banks in America, and they have experience in the credit card space. I think they know that their Smartly card is pretty much cooked, and they just chalked that up to a 2% back card. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that got discontinued in a couple years. So while other banks like Citi have been launching their new travel cards, US Bank's pretty much just back to the drawing board. Now here's where I think they're going to go next. Recently, there were surveys sent out to current Altitude Reserve cardholders. Those were people that got the card before they shut off the application to the public. Now there were a lot of different questions in the surveys, but there were a couple that stood out to me. A question about transferring points to merchants, which hints at them thinking about non-travel partner redemptions. So if they did bring this card back to life, instead of having the 50% boost for travel, maybe you'd get a 50% boost or a 100% boost if you redeem your points somewhere like Costco or Target or whatever crappy brands they choose. There were also questions about the look and feel of the physical card, hinting at them redesigning it and relaunching it, because, why would they be asking that if they weren't at least thinking about it? And probably the most interesting were questions about this idea of having this so-called modular credit card where you start out with a base, let's say a $400 annual fee, and then you could add or subtract benefits for a higher or lower annual fee. So the best example I can give is, let's say you went to Texas Roadhouse and you ordered a plain potato for $2. You can add cheese for maybe an extra $1, bacon for an extra 50 cents, and kind of choose what you get on there, and what toppings you choose is going to be reflected on your bill. This is the same way that the credit card might work. Now, these are all just survey questions and we can only speculate, but I have been pretty spot on with my credit card predictions for this year. So here's what I think is going to happen and how US Bank is going to resurrect the Altitude Reserve credit card. So if you guys remember the old DCEU or whatever it was called before it was just replaced by this new James Gunn universe, there was the 2000 whatever Batman v Superman that came out, and then Superman ended up getting killed, or I guess like dying, when he fought Doomsday, right? And then in the 2017 Justice League movie, they were all getting cooked by, I think, Steppenwolf or whatever his name was. So they dug up Superman's corpse and then resurrected him. But when they brought him back, he wasn't quite the same. He was kind of geeking out a little bit. So I think that's pretty much what's going to happen with the Altitude Reserve, but there's not going to be any Lois Lane to calm that card down. They've already taken off and brought the Reserve card back twice before, so I don't see them bringing the card back on the market for a third time with no new changes. I think they're probably going to get rid of the 50% boost feature when redeeming for travel and, get some of the partner benefits like Costco or Walmart or something. That would align with their cashback focus and having no transfer partners, and it would also align kind of with their real-time rewards thing that they've been trying to push that really just never took off. I do think that is the most likely course that US Bank will take. Maybe they'll add some new credits and a higher fee, but it'll just be another weird niche card that they have, like their shopper Cashplus, and it's not going to be able to compete unless it had something unique and valuable like the last version of the Altitude Reserve. If you guys want to learn more about how I think you should play the credit card game and the different points currencies, you guys can click this video here where I walk you through all of that.